Okay, today we are talking about how to create your own PHP MVC framework. Before starting to code, we are talking to some theory about the MVC pattern and how this pattern can help us to solve one of the main problems we have when we are coding an application, the repeated code. This pattern divides our code in three main components: the controller, the view, and the model. Between them, there is a communication that is represented with the arrows, and those arrows says that changes in the model will be reflected in the view and vice versa. Vice versa. And the same with the controller. In the model, we will have our business logical, so the classes that come from our diagram of classes will be here. Our entities, our services, etc. In the view, we'll have all the stuff related to the presentation, and this is where the user can interact with our application, introducing new data, requesting for data, updating data, deleting data, etc. And the controller is the component with the task of communicating the view and the model. The controller will use a model to resolve the problem of the task or the task that the current view is trying to resolve. So if the users want to see a list of products, the controller will use the model which works with the product class. We also will use another pattern called from controller. This pattern is used to make that all the requests to our application have to go to only one point. This point is called the from controller. In our case, this will be our index PHP. It will be the only PHP file that will be in the public folder. Let's see the workflow of a request. When a new request comes to our application, it will go to our from controller, our index PHP. And in this file, we have to decide which controller will respond or will handle that request to create a response. The task of deciding which controller will be the responsible for that request is done by the another component called router. A router takes an URL and gives us a controller. The controller can interact with a model, and the model can interact with the database. So if the current request and is for updating a product. The model will be the product entity, and we will the model will works with the products table. Then the action controller has to decide which view will be rendered as a response. That view, in that view, will be injected the results that the model puts in our controller, or give us at our controller. The view can also use a layout. The layout is the repeated parts that are in all our views, like the footer, like the header, like a sidebar, etc. It also has the structure of any view. Now that we have some concept of theory, we are going to code in our PHP MVC framework. So let's see the code. Our application will be a simple calculator that we can see it working here. So we have an index page that show us all the possible operation we can do with the calculator and the operations. So we can operate and take a result. Okay. So the code. And the first thing we have to do is create two main folders, one called application and one called public. In the public folder, there is only one file, the front controller, and the index PHP. Remember that all the requests will go to the front controller. And the rest parts of our application will be in the application folder that is out of the public access. And in that folder, the application folder, we are going to create one folder for each component of the MVC pattern. One for controllers, one for models, one for views, and another one for layouts. Let's see the index PHP, our front controller. In the front controller, the first thing we have done is changing the relative path to our application there. Okay, so now all the rows, all of the rows of our files will be relative to our application folder. So in this case, we are going to use two controllers, so we must to require them. Okay, the application controller index controller to show the menu, and the calculator controller which is the responsible of all the calculator operations. And so in the front controller, the first task, as we have seen in the workflow, is to choose one controller or one action controller. This task is a task that is done in a professional framework by a component called router. This is our simply routing. And in our case, we will use the URL to see which controller have to be the responsible of responding to that request. So in the URL we get the controller variable, and in case it is not set, it will be the front page. So we have to choose the index controller. In another case, it means that in the URL we have a controller var. So we construct the controller name using that var. Okay, so we have to convert first to uppercase the controller name, and we add a suffix, the suffix controller, because all our classes, because all our controllers have that suffix. And the action also comes from the URL, and we construct the action name, okay, with the suffix action. Finally, when we have the controller and we have the action, we construct the controller instance. We make a new controller name, and then we call that action. Okay? Let's see the controllers. As you can see here, we have the index controller and the calculator controller with the controller suffix. And the index controller is very simple, and the only one thing that it does is to require a view where the menu resides, where we have the menu, and that view is on the application views folder, and it's called index PHP. That is a file extensions that indicates that that file can have a PHP and HTML code, but it's not important. It can be TXT, HTML, whatever you want. So here we are using namespaces that that namespace corresponding to the folder in which this controller is. The class name of the controller is the same as the file index controller and as the file name, and we have an action called index action, okay, with the suffix action. So let's go to see the view. For that, the view is index PHP. This view, and in this view we require the header and the footer, the common parts for any view in our application. And in the middle we have the specific code for this view. And for this view we have a menu with all the operations. The links of those operations contains the controller and the action that we were requiring here in the front controller. Okay, this get controller and get action. Okay, and we have defined a link for each operations. Let's see now the calculator controller. The calculator controller needs the model or the service calculator and for doing the operations. So we require the calculator model, and we use the namespace model calculator model, and we are in the namespace controllers. So we have the class. This class have many actions, but the idea is simple. The sum action is used to render the form. Okay, we will render a form to request for two numbers, and then we are going to make the operation with those numbers. And as we will use the same form for every operation, we must to differentiate them with a var. That var will be used in the action of the form. So we create here the var do sum, and here do subtract, etc. Let's see the form before continuing. The form will be in the views. This is the form. As always, we require the header and the footer, and the form use that var which comes from the controller, the action. So this form will be sent to our front controller, to the controller calculator, and the action, the one which comes from the controller. The rest of the form is the same for every operation. It takes two operators, and it have a button. So the calculator controller. Okay, so in the sum action we show the form, and in the do sum action we will use the model. So first we create an instance of the calculator model, and we pass to it the two operators which comes from the form. Then we call to the model sum method, and we have a result. Okay, we take the result from that model, and this var will be used in the result view. Okay, so a controller use a model for make the operation and send the result to the view. Okay, and we are requiring here a file, so it means that this file will be passed here. So this var will be available in that file. Okay, so the view result is the responsible of showing the result. Okay, so it is very simple. The only thing it does is showing the result var. Okay, and the rest of the methods are the same. Okay, so the last thing we have to see is our calculator model, our service or our model. Any class, in fact, any class is a service. So this is our service, and it's very simple. It has 3 variables, 3 vars, a constructor which receive the operators and the methods for make any operations. Okay, and one last method to return the result. Okay, very simple. So in the layouts folder we have the 2 parts which we are using in every view. Okay, the header that contains the HTML tags and the title, and the footer that contains the closing HTML tags and our footer. Okay, so we are going to see one improvement to our code. For that we have to change here, and we see now that in our calculator controller we have added a new var, a new property called model, and in our constructor we someone has to pass us that model. Okay, so here in our application we don't now create the model. Okay, that is called dependency injection, and it is used for no repeating code. And in our last implementation we had to create the model in every action, but in the case we had created the model in the constructor, and imagine the situation that you have different controllers making the same instantiation. So the same code will be in different parts of our application, so that it's repeated code. Now in this implementation the calculator model instance is created in only one point, in the front controller. In a professional framework, this task is done by dependency injection component. But here in our simple framework, as we done with the routing task, we make the same with the creation of our dependencies. Here, in the case of the controller is the calculator controller, we create its dependency here the model, new models, calculator model, and we make the injection of that dependency when we create the controller. Here, new controller name, and we are passing here the model. Okay, the rest of it is the same. A dependency can be pasted to the constructor, or it can be also pasted using setters methods, but the concept is the same. So this is all, and you have in my blog an entry with the transcription of this video. Okay, so thank you for watching, and sorry for my poor English.